Greetings in the precious name of the Lord Jesus Christ. I'm Bishop Joe Fierce, and I'm here to continue my series on What Time Is It? Based on God's timetable. That is, God's prophetic timetable. And I'm studying from the book of Matthew, chapter 24. And last week I told you that I was going to be using Mark 13 and Luke chapter 21 as well, because they tie together and each one of them give a little more information to keep us on track so we won't veer off. Because a lot of people take Matthew 24 and they see it strictly for the church. But truthfully, it's not strictly for the church. Most of this chapter, the greater part of it, pertains to the Jewish nation, the nation of Israel. Jesus was laying out things to let them know what it was going to be like with them in their nation. So we got to pay attention to that. And we don't want to veer off, because if we start putting the church, all this is the church in Matthew 24, trying to make it an allegory, trying to make it symbolic of, the church, we miss it. So what I want to do today is go into the next portion of this discussion, this study rather, on the book of Matthew 24. Last week, I went through verse 1 through 14 to show you the picture that Christ was painting. I told you at the beginning that he told them how the temple would be destroyed, and in 70 AD it was destroyed by Titus. But then I told you there were two more questions, because they asked him three questions. When these things will be, what should be the sign of your coming, and when will be the end of the age? He answered the first one because it happened in 70 AD. But the other two questions as to when he would come again and what will be the end of the age. And I told you in verse 4 through 14, just like in Revelation chapter 6, it's a preview of what is to come. Because in chapter 6 of Revelation, it covers pretty much all the events that are going to happen, but it doesn't give you the details of everything. It just gives you a synopsis, a preview. And when you see a preview, you don't see the whole movie, you just see highlights. So verse 4 through 14, these are the highlights. These are the things that he was telling them and us to pay attention to for the end of the world, or the end of the age, or when he would get ready to come back. And after reading verse 14, he said the gospel will be preached all over the whole world, and then the end should come. So he used that to summarize the things. But today we're going to look at what he did as he was talking to them, because he knew they wouldn't get the big picture. So he gave them a synopsis, but then he breaks it down in these next verses. It's going to give us a time frame. Because in verse 15, we see what begins the second half of the tribulation period. That's why I said between verse 4 and 14, we enter, or those that are on the planet will enter into the tribulation period. And if you remember, I said I believe that the war of Ezekiel and Gog and Magog war, chapter 38 of Ezekiel, was probably going to set it off in some kind of way. It was going to set off what is going to come and how we're going to actually enter in. But we had to pay attention, because we don't know the precise time. We don't know when it actually happened between verse 4 and 14. We know in the beginning of chapter 24 in verse 4 that he starts talking about things that are relevant to the disciples. Even in verse 9, he talks about them being put in prison. He tells them from Luke, hey, you don't have to worry about what you're going to say. He tells them that they're going to be put in jail. That was proven. Paul was put in jail. Silas and Paul, James, Peter. James was killed. Stephen was killed. A lot of them were killed. So he tells them about all these things that were going to happen. But at some point, the world will enter in to the tribulation period between verse 4 and 14. Just don't know when, because verse 15, what we're getting ready to look at. So when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, you know what's going on. So in verse 15, we see immediately that here is what Daniel talked about in Daniel chapter 9. He talked about that the Antichrist, when he came, he was going to have a 7-year covenant, some kind of peace treaty. He's going to have Israel sign along with many other nations. And they're going to sign this covenant, and he's going to pretty much tell Israel, you're going to be okay. I'm going to make sure you're protected. Whatever happened in this last episode, it won't happen again. And Israel is going to accept him. They're going to eventually think that this could be or is the Messiah. That's what's going to happen. But this desolation is going to happen in the middle. It tells us in Daniel chapter 9 that in the middle, Paul tells us about what he was going to do. Jesus called it the abomination of desolation. The Antichrist is going to go into the temple, the rebuilt temple. The rebuilt temple. It will be rebuilt. That Daniel tells us that he's gonna go in there and he's gonna break the covenant. Paul tells us that he's going to go in there and do something that he shouldn't do. He's probably going to offer up something. It's going to be an abomination. Whatever he does, he's going to put some on the altar, because they're going to go back to sacrificing the animals just like they did in the Old Testament. It is going to happen again during the tribulation period. And when it does, at the midpoint, the Antichrist is going to break this covenant. And Jesus made it clear. If you read in Luke or in Mark, you will see it talks about the abomination of desolation when he goes into the temple and he proclaims that he is God. You can bet then that, boy, you're in the middle of it. That is the middle point. That's the midpoint. In fact, in the book of Revelation tells us the Antichrist is going to be given 1,260 days. It also says it's going to be 2 witnesses, 2 prophets, who I believe is Elijah and Enoch, because they are also going to minister for 42 months. They're probably going to be on the scene letting everybody know that this is an impostor. He is not the Son of God. He is not God. And the Antichrist is really going to hate these guys, but they are going to wear him out. And they're going to make sure that the testimony of God goes forth during their time. Now, that's the midpoint. We see verse 15. Let's go a little further. Now, we're going to get into this thing, which I want to show you what is really focusing. Jesus is giving his attention to the Jewish nation, because in the middle of the tribulation, it's going to be centered on the Jewish people, because the first 3.5 years, the Antichrist is going to deceive the nation of Israel, because they're still right now, the Jewish nation, Israel, is waiting for their Messiah. They're waiting, and they're thinking he is coming. He is coming, but he is not going to be this impostor, this Antichrist, this man of sin, the son of perdition that the Bible calls him. He is going to deceive them. And in the middle, he's going to break that covenant, as I said. But Jesus now is showing them, and he's showing us, focus on the nation of Israel. And here's why. Verse 16 says, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Those who are in Judea, not America, not South America, not Canada, not Australia, not any other place. He said those that are in Judea, that's over in Israel. He's letting them know that people, when you see these things, when you see the abomination of desolation that Daniel spoke about, you know that summer is nigh and even at the door. So you need to prepare yourself. If you're here and you're listening to this and you missed the rapture's already occurred, you can still be saved, but it is going to be a rough period. I am telling you, but you can be saved. You may lose your life. I can't guarantee it, but a lot of people are going to die. They're going to have to sacrifice their life, because at some point, the man of sin is going to require people to have a mark in their right hand or their forehead. Now, we don't know what this is, but we do believe at this point in history that it's probably going to be some kind of microchip or something that's going to be injected into the hand or the forehead. And it's going to be some way of paying homage or tracking human beings. However they put it, it's going to be enforced sometime shortly after in the middle of the tribulation period. Now, Verse 17 says, let no one who is on the housetop not go down to take what is in his house. Again, back in those days when Jesus was talking to them, Jews had flat housetops. And in a lot of places, if you go over there now, you still see flat housetops. So he was just talking to the Jewish nation. It's very clear. He's telling them, you people that are in Jerusalem during this time when the abomination of desolation, that's when the Antichrist is going to come against the nation, and he is going to pillage the nation. He's going to rape and he's going to kill. And many of the people are going to have to go off into the mountains. That's where they're going to go. It is believed it is Petra over by Jordan. It is believed that's where they're going to go. And it's going to be prepared for them. And it's going to be a safe haven where the Antichrist is going to be preoccupied with other things that's going to distract him, other wars, other skirmishes. And God's going to make sure that the nation of Israel at that point is protected. But again, we see Jesus is specifically talking about the nation of Israel because that's where he's focused at. Verse 18 says, and let the one who is in the field not turn back to take his cloak. We're talking about people, and we're talking about people in Jerusalem. Verse 19 says, and alas, for the women who are pregnant, and for those who are nursing infant in those days, pray that your flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. It is going to be rough. But what I want you to know really clearly, the Sabbath, the Jews honor the Sabbath. Again, we're talking about the Jews. We're not talking about Christians. We're talking about Israel. So Jesus is pinpointed. He's letting us see through these verses that he's given them. He's talking about the housetop. He's talking about the Sabbath. He's clearly talking about Judea. He's telling them, and this is going to be in Jerusalem. The Antichrist is going to bear down as he breaks the covenant. He's going to try to annihilate the Jewish nation. Verse 21 says, for then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. It is going to be a horrific times. I mean, I can't even put it in words, the magnitude, because now we're talking about stuff that's going down in Revelation. We're talking about the 7 seals that will be broken. We're talking about the 7 trumpets that are going down. We're talking about the vials of God going down. It is going to be bad. In fact, it says in Revelation, in the first half, 1/4 of humanity will die. 1/4. We're talking about 1.9 to 2 billion people are going to perish just in the first half, because the Antichrist is going to come, and he's going to come to conquer. He's going to bring famine. He's going to bring war and famine and pest and all these things. These 4 horses of apocalypse are going to ride. It is going to be a horrific time. Based on we having about 7.7 billion people, that's where I get that number from. I don't know what it will be at the time, but if we go by 7.7 billion people that's on the planet right now, can you imagine what it's going to be like? That's going to be a lot of people. Now, some people believe that the first 2.5 years is peaceful. It's going to be peaceful for Israel because the Antichrist is going to sign a covenant with them and say, you're going to be at peace. But for the meantime, he's going to be trying to conquer the world, and he will. And at the midpoint, I should say, he is going to be given power at that point, and he's going to call himself God. He's going to have 42 months left. The beginning, he's going to be reigning and taking over the world. He's going to become the world leader. It's going to be a dictatorship. But at the midway point, he is going to run everything. He is going to run it, and it's going to be given to him at that point. Because mainly, Israel is going to cry out for the true Messiah. That's what's really going down. God's going to make sure they're safe, but they're going to come to their senses, and they're going to know that this is an imposture. And those 2 prophets are going to be preaching around the midpoint. I don't know if it's exactly at the midpoint, but somewhere around the midpoint, those 2 prophets, who I believe is Elijah and Enoch, are going to be saying he's a liar, he's an impostor, and he's not going to be able to do anything to them during their time of testimony. But they can wreak havoc on the planet. But it's going to be a horrible time on the planet. this world has never seen the likes of. Just can you imagine almost 2 billion people and it may be more than that. I'm just giving you one instance that it says 1/4 of mankind will die. Just 1/4. And we don't even know how the numbers are going to accrue. That's at one point. Just imagine what it's going to be like. You don't want to be here. If you're listening to me and you're here now and the rapture hasn't occurred, give your heart to Jesus. Get your act together. Stop playing church. It's going to be bad. Just looking at this coronavirus thing, as I mentioned last week, we can see some things already being set up. We can see how the world is going to come together, how the world is going to say, you know what? We need to protect ourselves from the aliens. That's when the rapture takes place. They're going to be thinking like that. They're going to say, we got to track everybody. And he's going to require this thing to be put in your right hand or forehead at the midpoint, somewhere around about. So we got to be, right now, we ought to be giving our hearts to Jesus. Not out of fear, but understanding what is coming. I don't put a time on it. I don't know when it's going to happen. But just looking at things, and as we continue to go through this chapter, I'm going to give you some insights. I am telling you, we shouldn't be playing. In verse 22, Jesus said, and if those days had not been cut short, no human being would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. Now, I know that some people want to say the elect is the church, but it's not talking about the church. He is not. He is talking about the Jewish nation, because the Jews are the elect. But we're elect, and all the word elect means is to be chosen. Jesus is elect. Jesus is elected to be the Messiah. You know, that's when nobody's going to take Jesus' place. I know some people believe in replacement theology, and they think that this is talking about. That's why I'm very clear and trying to let you see we're talking about the Jews. He's saying for the sake of the Jewish people, he is going to shorten it, because the Antichrist is going to wear out anything that talks about God or talks about Jesus. He's going to persecute those Christians that are going to be here, that are going to get saved during the tribulation period, that are going to give their life to Jesus for real. And he is going to just wreak havoc. And I'm telling you, you don't want to be here. But it's going to be cut short. Now, some people take that and they think the tribulation period is not going to be 7 years. It is going to be 7-year tribulation period. He's just saying that the reason it's 7 years is because God had to cut it short. God orchestrated how long this thing was going to last, because he knew if it would have lasted 7 years and a half, it probably wouldn't have been no human being alive on the planet. But for the sake of the elect, because the elect are the Jews, the elect have got to cry out, according to Zechariah, for the Messiah. So he can't let them be annihilated. He's got to protect them for their sake. He's already taken his church off, and he already knows that there are going to be people that get saved, they're going to die, and they're going to go to heaven. But the Jews, that's why he's working on them. He's got them in a position to where they are going to cry out at some point for the true Messiah. Now, we don't get all this in Matthew 24. We don't get this in Mark 13, and we don't get this in Luke 21. I'm just kind of giving you some overlays. I'm giving you a little more information. And in verse 23, Jesus says, and then if anyone say to you, look here, here is Christ, or there he is, do not believe him. It is going to be crazy. I'm telling you right now, it's crazy. People have sent me, I don't know, thousands of videos trying to convince me about certain things, especially when it came to the coronavirus. It's a hoax. It's a pandemic. It's all this. And people send me all their videos. It just makes me sad, because so many Christians are pillaging and sending stuff that they shouldn't be sending to other people. And it's deceptive, and people want you to believe them. The best way I can do it is stay in the Word. And the best way you can do it is stay in the Word. Don't be listening to all this junk that's coming out there now. Stay in tune with the God channel. Stay in tune with the voice of the Holy Spirit. That is the only way you will not be deceived. But during that time, it's going to be all kind of people popping up, talking about, I'm here, I'm the Messiah, I'm Jesus, and all this stuff. And I'm telling you, if you're on the planet, don't believe them. Don't, even if you see some being that looks superhuman and they can do different things, don't believe them. Don't believe them. It is deception. It is deception. Verse 22 says, false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. They're going to come and they're going to do this, but it's going to be two prophets. Like I said, Elijah and Enoch, who I believe. Some people believe it's going to be Elijah and Moses, but I believe it's going to be Enoch and Elijah, because those are the two men that have not died. Moses was buried, and I don't believe that God is going to change that, because he says that it's been given for man to perish, to die once. Talks about it in Psalms, talks about it in Hebrews. So I don't believe God is going to renege on it. I believe every human being will die, and there will be change in the rapture, one way or the other. But at the same time, he's telling us that these false prophets are going to have power. They're going to be able to do miracles. So it's going to be, I believe the Neanderthals are going to come back. I do. I believe some type of Satan is going to be deceiving so many people, because God says he was going to give them a strong delusion. Paul talked about this in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. When he was explaining about what was going to go down, he was trying to comfort those that living in Thessalonica. So it is going to be a trying time, but it's going to be a time of great deception. So it's going to be a lot of stuff going on during the tribulation period that we don't even see now. With these flying saucers are these unidentified, ships that are out there now. It's probably going to be an invasion of some sort they're going to claim. I don't know specifically, but these are the things that I believe are going to be going on this earth during that time. That's going to create so much confusion. And then verse 25 says, see, and I have told you beforehand. Verse 26 says, so if they say to you, look, he is in the wilderness, do not go out there. If they say, look, he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. Verse 27, for as the lightning comes from the east and shines as far as to the west, so will the coming of the Son of Man. Wherefore the corpse is, wherever the corpse is, there the vultures will gather. That's what is going to go down. That is what's going to go down. Just like that. So Jesus said, pay attention, because these people or these beings are going to be able to do miracles. At least it's going to be some type of pseudo miracles to deceive people. But then Jesus said, this is what he said, but immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven will be shaken. Something I want to share with you that God showed me when I was a kid. And it pertains to verse 29, 30, and 31, speaks to what it's going to be like when he comes, what is going to be going down at the second coming. I've seen this and what happens. You don't want to miss it as I continue my series on what time is